everyone, welcome to the book station. I am Sanjana and I wish all of you a very happy new year. Just like every year, I'm late this time to this trend of talking about the best books that I read in the previous year. Nevertheless, here I am to talk about the 9 best books that I read in 2022. To be honest, I read 28 books on the whole in 2022. Some of them were audiobooks, and my Goodreads goal was 51 books, but I didn't meet it. But I never meet it and I never regret it because I always end up exploring great books, loving new authors, and falling in love with new characters as well. And to be honest, like completely, 2022 has been the best reading year of my life because I found the most dear characters last year and also discovered some of my favorite authors whom I'll pick up for the rest of my life. Now, without further ado, let's get started. The first book that I read in 2022, which became my favorite, is A Man Called Ova by Fredrik Backman. I'm sure all of you would have heard of Fredrik Backman's name. He's such a loved and famous author, and I should say for all the right reasons. A Man Called Ova is about the 60-year-old man who has retired, and the book starts off on the first day of his retirement. Life after retirement. So he comes home to an empty house. He has no wife, no kids of his own, and he is not very friendly with his neighbors. He's a bit cranky and extremely judgmental. But one day, when his neighbors, he has new neighbors, his entire life is changed. And we as readers are taken on this most enduring journey of Ova. I think Fredrik Backman is so loved, not just because of his great simple writing style, but also because how many emotions he makes the reader feel. There's happiness, there's sorrow, and you're crying and smiling at the same time. I remember at the end of A Man Called Ova, I was crying like a kid, yet I was filled with so much joy at every page. And that is the reason why I would suggest, if you haven't read Fredrik Backman, this book is one you should pick up first. The next book that I read was, the Shiva trilogy. Though it's 3 books, I'm going to consider it one. Trilogy has been on my TBR for a long time, and most of you would have read it, especially people who love reading about Indian mythology and Indian literature. The first time I read Amish was when I read Sita, which is the second book in the Rama series, and I did not love it. But Shiva trilogy has won my heart over. It is one trilogy and one book that I would want to experience all over again as a new reader. And it's all about Shiva. Why I believe that I love this book so much is this trilogy has every genre in the perfect amounts. So Amish, with his amazing and captivating writing and simple language, takes you on the journey of Shiva, giving us a bit of thriller, a bit of mystery, a bit of history, a bit of mythology, a bit of love, there's romance, and so many emotions at once, and you can't get enough of this book. But one mistake I did was reading the last part of the last book at 1 a.m. So I was up from 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. one night, or one morning as you want to call it, reading the last book and crying my heart out, because this book, the ending especially, is not what you expect, or I don't know how good of a guesser you are, but I am not, and I was completely unprepared for the ending, and that is one of the reasons I think I was so in love with this book. So the third favorite book of mine is Paul Kalanithi's autobiography, When Breath Becomes Air. It is semi-autobiographical because the last part is written by his wife for obvious reasons. Paul Kalanithi is this student, boy from Indian origin who lives in the US, who grows up with this thirst to understand what life and death means. So he pursues a degree in literature, but that does not allow him or does not quench his thirst. So he ends up becoming a neurosurgeon and one of the best in his fields. But unfortunately, life has this extremely cruel way of making him understand the meaning of death by diagnosing him with lung cancer. It's then that Paul Kalanithi decides to write this book on all his understanding and reflections of life up till he became a neurosurgeon and was diagnosed with cancer. This book is extremely enduring and it's extremely philosophical, as it rightly should be, but it also makes you aware of so many truths and so many realities of life. And my favorite part of this book wasn't just Paul Kalanithi's own words, but his wife's words, where she describes his last days and her life after Paul's passing away. This was not a book. This book wasn't what I expected it to be, but it's one that I would revisit again. And if you are someone who loves reading philosophical writings, you will definitely find a lot of peace and many answers in this book. The next book that I read after this is The Beauty of All My Days by Ruskin Bond, one of the most loved authors, I would say, of this century. Ruskin Bond has written so many books and there's so much he has shared, but in this book you get into some of the most important people and most important happenings in his life which shaped who he is. And this book fills you with a lot of hope and happiness, and this book got me through a reading slump. So if you've read Ruskin Bond or love his reading, I think this is a book that you will definitely enjoy and will find joy in. The next book that I picked up after this has been on my TBR for almost 3 years now. It is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I kept putting off picking this book up because I thought for some reason Leo Tolstoy's writing is going to be extremely difficult. I mean, all classics have language that is, unlike contemporary fiction, just a bit tough. But since he's a Russian author, I always thought he might end up using extremely difficult words and extremely well-structured but tough sentences. But I was taken aback when I read Anna Karenina and found it so flowy. I mean, the language is so simple yet so profound. It's extremely engaging. It's an entire drama on its whole. And once you pick this book up, you get a taste of every part of life. There's people undergoing depression, there's birth, there's death at an early time, there's love, there's unrequited love, and there's so much happening that you're kept engaged all the time. It's like watching a drama. So, and the language that he uses is, like I said, is very simple yet so profound. So you will never be fed up of reading Tolstoy. It is one book that I plan to revisit very soon. So if you love classics, I think Anna is a must. So please don't put it away like I did. Pick it up as soon as possible. The next favorite of 2022 is an audiobook called The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. It is a retelling of the fairy tales. Some of the fairy tales are The Beauty and the Beast, Little Red Riding Hood, Bluebeard, Puss in Boots, and Dracula. And the best part about this book is that it strips these Disneyfied versions of fairy tales and serves them to us in the most raw form. They are gothic, there is gore, there's violence, and all of them just conveying to us the true purpose of fairy tales. So fairy tales were first written or collated to throw caution to kids and young girls to be very scared and vigilant about the dangers of the world. And I think Angela Carter's version beautifully brings all of those purposes out, and you can not stop or cannot stop listening to or reading this book at all. If you love reading retellings of fairy tales, this is going to be one of your best experiences. So do pick it up. The next book that I read was Educated by Tara Westover. I fell in love with Tara Westover's story when I started watching some of her interviews on YouTube. And picking up Educated, I thought it was about her struggle to get a college degree and have an education. It is that, but it is so much more than that. Tara Westover is born into a dysfunctional family, which is due to the mental illness that her father has, which goes undiagnosed, which completely changes the dynamics of parenting, of the relationship between siblings, and makes life difficult for everyone in the family. So we see Tara Westover try to make sense of every action, every event, and every person in her life, and try to find her own meaning. Towards the end of this book, you just feel so drained yet filled with hope and knowledge, because there are so many gut wrenching events that happen with Tara that are just unbearable to read. But by the end, you realize that life for Tara and for most of us is all about finding your own truth amidst all that chaos that we go through. And if you love reading memoirs and enjoy reading about the growth of someone from a dysfunctional family, this is one that you will cherish forever. The next book that I enjoyed reading in 2022 is The Red-Haired Woman by Orhan Pamuk. Again, I did not pick him up earlier because I thought his writing would be extremely complex, but I've never been so wrong. Orhan Pamuk's writing so simple, so easy, like breeze to read, yet his ideas and themes are so complex. The Red-Haired Woman is all about Sem, and it's based on the idea of Oedipus complex. So Sem, our protagonist for the major part of the book, grows up without a father for the majority of his life. So his father abandons him and his mother at a very early age. So Sem has to work as a well-digger's apprentice to earn money to go to college. And it's then that this master, well-digger, becomes the fatherly figure in Sem's life. But since Sem is well-read and is aware of the Oedipus complex, it's always on the back of his head. And during this time when he works as an apprentice, he falls in love with a much older red-haired woman who works in a drama company. And just when he feels like he's falling in love, a tragedy happens which pushes him to run away from the love as well as his fatherly figure. And then we continue following Sem's journey when he becomes a famous businessman and gets married, and how few years later again the Oedipus complex starts driving his life. It's extremely tough to describe this book, but it's all about the West, the East, and the clash between modernity and tradition, as well as how some of our lives are so predictable, yet so shocking in so many ways. So I think if you haven't read Orhan Pamuk, this would be the best place to start off. I have not read any of his other books, but this has definitely made me fall in love with his writing. So I'll pick up other books in the future. The last book on this list is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. If you've watched my previous videos, you will know that I love Adichie's writings. I've loved Zikora, The Purple Hibiscus, and Half of a Yellow Sun, but I think Americana tops them all because of the theme. It's basically the love story of Ifemelu and Obense, two young kids who are in love within Nigeria. Both of them are extremely smart, and Obense especially plans to go to America to pursue his education. Unfortunately, life has other plans when only Ifemelu goes to the US. And there is where she is made aware of the color of her skin. And it's then she starts writing a blog on racism in America. And this part of Ifemelu's life, Adichie has used extremely well to head-on analyze racism and expresses her profound thoughts on it. And on the other hand, we have Obense struggling to get an education, and he tries to get one in London, but unfortunately he has to take up odd jobs under the name of another person until tragedy occurs and his life is turned upside down. To just classify this book as only a love story would be an extremely unfair thing to do, because this book is much more than that. And if you are interested in reading one of the best fictions about racism, this book is for you. So those were the 9 books I enjoyed reading in 2022 and enjoyed talking to you all about. I hope you do find some suggestions here and enjoy reading them as much as I did, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, do read a book and take care. Bye bye.